From?
Yes, we do. And Kenya, I see you started recording. Thank you. So I'm going to hand the gavel to First Vice Chair Jeremy Davis while I contact our chairperson. Thank you.
The last meeting's review was sent out by mail earlier. Hopefully we've had time to review those minutes. Is there any discussion or correction to the minutes from our last meeting? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
This is Erwin Bennett. I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Janice Rodriguez, I second that.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays?
Aye.
Minutes approved.
And also, Erwin, if you would do the honors of making a motion to proceed to ensure that we are proceeding virtually in compliance with the governor's executive order.
I can do that. I move that the items on the meeting agenda constitute essential business of this board. Meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans considering the COVID-19 outbreak, and any rule that conflicts with Governor's Executive Order 16 permitting electronic meetings be suspended.
Jeremy, are you still here?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do we need a second to that motion? All right, looks like I have a second from Commissioner Smith. No. I'm sorry. It's so hard.
Was there a second?
Oscar Miller, I second.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any against? All right, motion passed.
Okay, everyone, the smell, please remember to remute yourself like if you're not speaking. I appreciate that. And I believe we have a by Commissioner Ali.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. It says I was muted. The video wasn't working. So that's on purpose.
That if you were muted on purpose?
Yeah, I mean, if
Yes.
we're all muted and the video is also muted.
Yes, I would really appreciate if people then it is a significant amount of background noise. So thank you.
Okay.
All right, and I'm sorry, we are really going to get this underway here in a minute, but Kenya, I believe that we might have Marissa on the line. starts with 61529. If we do, yes, Marissa Richmond, could you please promote her so she can speak?
Yes, 1 second. Okay. Now on, but her microphone or video is showing. Okay, there she is.
Marissa, are you with us now?
Jeremy, can you please mute your computer? Thank you. And Marissa is on. She's just on mute. Marissa, you will have to unmute yourself to speak.
Marissa, are you there?
Can you hear?
Yes. You'll have to disconnect from the video and just use your phone, please.
Here.
All right, this is ridiculous. We have things that we need to get to. So Jeremy, you will continue to chair. Could Marissa?
The next thing to the financials, correct? Mel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I think the next thing on the agenda is to review the financials. We are on page 6 of the attachment that Melanie sent out.
Yeah, so I can take that from here. Yeah, so there was a packet sent out in advance for those who might be joining us from the public. The documents that we're looking at can be viewed on our website at the same location where we post our agenda. And what I have shared with you all was, you had asked recently for a more substantive overview of where our budget is spent and on what items. So if you look, there's a document, the MHRC 2019-2020 budget breakdown. And while the categories that we have, like in our, the financial system for Metro, are broken out differently, right? So generally, when we give you the financial report annually, it doesn't really reflect the way we have done it here for you, because some things fall into different categories. But overall, this is probably the best big overview of where our money is spent annually, or at least was spent last year. Things that will be different for this fiscal year, obviously, will be the different sponsorships for programs that are generally in person. If some of them are going to be modified for, health, for public health reasons, we may be able to continue to support them. Some of them, I think, are important, like the Fair Housing Summit, which is a very substantive conference on fair housing. I had the pleasure of being the keynote speaker for last year's summit. So my suspicion is that will be modified if we, heaven forbid, in April are still behind our computers. But some of the other events that we have done annually are really we're gonna have a difficult time modifying them. Things like, for instance, the Celebrate Nashville Festival, which in years past have, it's a huge event. There was, 60,000 people at that event last year. So I'm fairly certain that is not going to be happening this October. Other things to highlight, the housing, the affordable and fair house primers, the little booklets that we did. We spent $5,500 on printing and other things related, including small contracts for some of our community member editors. So we aren't necessarily doing that again. However, I had, for this coming fiscal year, had shifted those funds over to the State of Black Nashville report that we had been working on prior to the stay-at-home orders. And so what I'm hoping that you all will do, is, to look at what we have done last fiscal year. I'm interested in hearing about what, the priorities for this next fiscal year are for you. And I would like to answer any questions you have about, where we spent the money last year. But I'm just really interested in hearing your substantive conversation about that. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Mel, thanks for this breakdown. I'm curious how, and you might have mentioned how the thresholds were decided. Was it just what they asked and then you considered, or the bigger budgets got the bigger chunks, the smaller budgets got the smaller chunks? How are the amounts determined?
Generally, it was about, what people asked for, but and quite frankly, the time in the fiscal year where it fell might also determine our ability, at the end of the fiscal year, if we had been particularly conservative throughout the fiscal year, which I tend to be, was like, okay, well, we do actually have a little bit more money to support, a new project, or, to think about, it's a smaller organization that, like Pride, get a significant amount of corporate support now. And so, are there areas that are within our, like within our general purview and priorities that we have not yet supported, right? So it's not have an algorithm necessarily, but those are generally the considerations.
So this year is a lot not actually getting funded because things aren't happening.
Well, Yeah, my suspicion is that it's just going to look different this year because many of the events that we had sponsored were, in person. Now, that's not entirely true, right? Like, Stand Against Racism definitely was in person, but this year we participated in the virtual stand with the YWCA, and so still supported that. But yeah, many of them, I just don't necessarily think that there's going to be the same need for financial support. Because there's just not going to be in-person events where they'll, where somebody might need, chairs and tables and food and, all of that stuff. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering if it's an opportunity to maybe do something strategic with the money, given recent events, given what's going on. I don't know, around the police hiring. I don't know. It might be interesting to think about as we discuss a bunch of other things.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that that's one reason why I thought it was really important to bring this to you all. Because I'm fairly certain we're just not going to be spending the same amount of money in event sponsorships. So, right, what is the best strategic use for the budget if we are not providing those sponsorships? And that's not necessarily something that you have to answer in this meeting. But I definitely wanted to inspire you all to have some conversation. So perhaps by next month, we'll have some solid ideas to put on the table.
Mel, this is Janice Rodriguez. Are you anticipating any kind of cutback in or any kind of budget revision from the mayor's office requiring any kind of reduction in any funding that you might see?
I am not currently anticipating that. From my understanding, right, it was a status quo budget, and the hiring freeze was lifted. So that sort of signals to me that, I would not anticipate a cut. Now, we also didn't anticipate a global pandemic that has driven us into our homes. And so, I don't want to completely rule that out, but that's not what I anticipate at this time.
Thank you.
Other questions, concerns, ideas before we move on? Well, I really want to implore you all to look at this list and, think about the priorities for the next fiscal year and how we might be able to leverage most strategically, the funds that we normally spend in, in our events and sponsorships.
Well, this is Commissioner Vennick. Along those lines, I'd like to sort of put out something for people to think about prior to our next meeting. And that is that one of our initiatives over the past couple of months we've talked about is Equity Lens. And to the extent that there are funds that are available through a reorientation of our budget to put towards developing a more robust approach to educating the mayor, the council, and the citizens of Nashville about the use of an equity lens in preparing the 2021-2022 budget, I think that would be money well spent.
Thank you, Commissioner Rennick. This is Mel, and yeah, I personally think that that's a very good idea, and in line with recommendations that you all have already made, and I think is a prime opportunity now to really concentrate on it.
Mel, this is Davey Tucker. I really hate to do it, but I agree with Irwin.
Thank you.
As do I. It's Aaron. And sorry for my late attendance. It took me 35 minutes to get connected, but I agree as well.
Well, thank you, and we're glad to have you, Commissioner Pryor.
Appreciate it. So sorry. I started to get on 10, 15 minutes early and it took forever. No need for more explanation, but I'm here. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, so if there are no other comments on that, I do also want to point out with regard to budget and financial matters, the mayor's office of performance management, we've been reporting metrics, and I've shared previously with you what the metrics are. I've included in the packet the actual historic number. So, we are keeping track of the education that we do, right? That's the actual workshops and trainings that we lead right from our office or that our staff members are leading. Then community engagement, which is MHRC led or direct participation. So that's not necessarily a training, but some kind of community engagement event. And then the number of constituents engaged through that work and through other work in our office. And I've been collecting those numbers since I was hired 5 years ago. So I have all that historic data. What we had not been collecting the number of calls for assistance or service, and not just calls, but emails or requests for some kind of service. And so we have now started tracking that, as well as the number of referrals that we make to third parties as a result of those requests. So in your packet, you'll see the first 2 months that we've tracked these new metrics was May and June of this calendar year. And both of those months were pretty consistent. We had 34 requests in May and 36 requests in June. Referred out 11 in May and 10 in June. If you are ever interested in what exactly are those calls, what we've started to do now is, since we're tracking those requests, we'll be able to categorize them so we can report. So I'll be able to report to you, what kinds of requests were they? Was it a call because somebody experienced discrimination, they needed assistance? Was it, a request for advice on a policy matter? Was it a request for a connection to a community leader or, to somebody who knows something about what the caller needs? And so I'll be able to report that to you in the future. And if there are no questions about those metrics, I think we should move on to the next agenda item. Not even Mhrc there.
Well,
Okay, well, Jeremy, if you will continue chairing, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. That concludes the discussion on this section, so we'll move on to old business and the mayor's roadmap for selection of the new police chief.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I really appreciate Eric Brown in the mayor's office joining us today. And thank you so much for your patience, Eric. And I asked you to join us so you could let the commissioners know what kind of requests you all have made from the mayor's office on a possible partnership in community engagement. And if you would also be so kind as to answer some of the questions that they might have about that. I did that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Eric.
Good afternoon to everybody. For those who do not know me, my name is Eric Brown. I'm the coordinator of economic opportunities and empowerment / youth youth empowerment. Again, just thank you for allowing me to be a part of this meeting today. Also, Mel, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. As many of you have already saw, the mayor has put out a press release of the roadmap to the next police chief. So just to give some context on this, the mayor would like to do a national-wide search on who will be the next police chief. So a few ways to go about that. One was to make sure that we are getting community engagement, just to get everybody's thoughts within the city, within the county, of what it is that they would like to see as far as their police chief. Also, their thoughts on public safety, especially in the context of what is going on right now while COVID-19 is going on. Within that process, there's a few things that's happening. So, of course, like we've said, the first thing what we're doing is that we have put out a survey on Hub Nashville that have asked about 5 specific questions and allows people to also give comments of thoughts that they have said. Within that as well, we've made sure to talk to council members just to let them know about this process as well, and to make sure that they're sharing it with their constituents. Another piece that we have added, or will be doing, we've done some, but we will be doing the rest this week, is that we have reached out to community organizations to also let them know about the roadmap and process, and if they would like to ask us any questions, that's doing so. One piece that we will be adding is that this week we're trying to reach out to a few of them to have one-on-one meetings so that we can talk and discuss things.
I lost like the last 10 seconds of what he was saying, or 15 seconds of what you're saying.
I apologize. Can everybody hear me now?
As did I.
Yeah, my screen had went blank, so I didn't see anybody talking, so I apologize for that. I think the last thing that I said was that we have talked to council members specifically about this roadmap, and hoping that they'll reach out to the constituents as well as also putting this out to neighborhood associations. From that process of what we have in that roadmap, we'll also have HR should be putting out the job description so that goes out nationwide. We're talking and discussing with various police associations so that we can make sure that this goes not only to the regular sources, but also make sure that it goes to the African American Police Association as well as others from that standpoint. Within that, there will be another part after I think they've collected all the data from the resumes and decided there would be 2 pieces. There will be a review board as well as a interview committee, a review committee and an interview committee. The review committee, I think, will be the ones that will shred down the process of how many of how many of the top finalist candidates that we'll have. From there, that will go to the interview committee, who will be the ones that will interview those finalists committees, those finalists as well within that. And then there will also be community engagement with those top finalists for people to have town hall meetings from there. And then the last piece, of course, will be once those recommendations are made by the interview committee, the mayor will make his decision of who he'll feel will be the next chief of police. So that's the overall piece. What we're hoping and asking from you all is also community engagement aspect of it. Not only just us putting out this survey, but if there's other parts that you decide are good pieces. I did read the letter that that Mel sent to the mayor's office with you all's recommendations. I thought there was great recommendations in there. Of course, reaching out to the police department to get officers' thoughts within this, with what they would like to see within the next police chief. Also working with other departments within the local government. And of course, like was also said, that I think we agree on, is that we get the wider community's thoughts on what this process should be. So within community engagement, we would love for that process to take place with the commission, with HRC, as well as the board members. I'm not really being very specific on what that looks like, because I would like to hear from you all of what community engagement can look like and how we can work together in the process. I think the biggest thing for me is more of making sure how we collaborate within this process so that it is fair and efficient process as well with that. So I'll stop talking, and I'm happy to take messages. And I apologize for John Bunton not being able to be on this call, because he also wanted to make sure that he was a part of the Community Oversight Board meeting, which is going on with their executive board as well. So I'm happy to take questions.
Can I ask a question? This is Erin. Am I interrupting anyone else? Okay, 2 questions. It wasn't totally clear to me, and then it's become a little less clear, but maybe that's just, my distance from this, but what the Community Oversight Board's participation will be in this process isn't totally clear. And then furthermore, obviously I applaud and appreciate Mel's leadership in sending out like our recommendations and that sort of thing, but I want to know how those translate into things that are practical in the process. And I guess what I mean by that is like, what input do we or the Community Oversight Board and or both have in constructing expectations for the position, as well as asking questions, like interview questions and that sort of thing, to get at some of this underlying stuff that will translate into action with regard to our recommendations. Thanks.
Sure. So let's start with the first question. Let's start with the first question with the community oversight process. Until the mayor actually gives more announcement about what the rest of that process looks like, that's as much as I can say for right now about what that looks like as far as Community Oversight Board. The second piece, would you say that second question again, please?
What'd you say?
The second question again, too, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was a bit wordy, I suppose. It's more about the way in which things like our recommendations can translate into sort of practical action and influence. So for instance, what the expectations are, job roles, those kinds of things, as well as questions that can be asked of the candidates in order to get at their sort of take on these expectations / recommendations.
Sure. So most of the recommendations, as far as with the community engagement, will go to the review board process. As far as the questions I think you're asking about the interview process, that would also come from whoever that committee is. And I would love to talk more with you all about that once the mayor gives out more information about those pieces.
Can I go next?
Please.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for coming to the meeting. It's nice to do somewhat face. I am curious, and I know my fellow commissioners will dive in deep on this. I'm curious about what there's a lot of questions to ask, and there's a lot of things that I'm concerned about. One is, community involvement. If you don't, not you, but if the process reveals that the community is not okay with aspects of the process, what will be the recourse? What will happen then? 2, what is the mayor's, there's a lot of asking of like what success looks like from our definition, and I think that's great. But if you were to just say, and I know it's hard representing another person in a whole office, but what would you say success of a police department head looks like from the mayor's office? And 3, I see this Pearson consulting company that's coming in and doing this recruiting, which gives me a little concern just because I want us to be doing something very new and innovative through this process. And if we're bringing in someone that's just used to like recruiting police executives, it's not going to be new and innovative. Although we can look at the various cities that they've hired for and how they're feeling about their police chief, and maybe use that as some sort of test for whether this is a successful company to use and man to use. And I don't know if you've got any insight or any research that you've done. I mean, Seattle police didn't have much of a role because the feds came in. But anyways, I just like to know of the cities that you guys have named, Seattle, Sacramento, Dallas, etc., how many are happy with who was identified through this consultant? And those are my 3 fairly loaded questions. So I appreciate any of those.
No problem. If we could, let's start with the last one, the consultant firm. The consultant firm will have a non-voting role within the process. I think there'll be more as an advisory role within this piece. And I wish I did have John Button to talk more about this process, because my knowledge as far as the consultant is very limited. The most that I do know about this gentleman that will be part of this process is that he used to be the police chief of San Francisco. Yes, the couple of cities that you talked about, he helped within that process. And I think he's also working currently with the city of Boulder, Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, within their process as well within that. So that's the most I can give you about that particular person within that one. I'm sorry, I forgot the other 2 questions. I can answer those.
What does a good police chief looks like to Mayor Cooper? What's the best case scenario in this situation from the mayor's office? And then what happens if community members don't like what's going on in the process and they speak up? The community members that are on the board or on the review, so that we avoid this cosmetic thing where we've got community members there to just check a box. And we actually are having a robust system. What if they don't like the consulting firm? What if they don't like the candidates? What if they don't, all kinds of things.
To your second question, I think, was that the one where you asked what does success look like? I'm sorry. All right. What does success? Sure. So what does success look like? I think for the mayor, I think the mayor has a lot that he is consistently thinking about. I mean, the number one, of course, we know is the racial tension that is going on within the city. Not only just the city, within the nation, within itself. He's definitely thinking about those opportunities. I think he's also thinking about a lot of the youth violence that is going on within the city as well. And then also very concerned about what use of force looks like, which is the big piece of why this does not have to do with this conversation. It's still connected about the policing commission that he wants to set up as far as talking about use of force policies and recommendations within that. He takes this very seriously. I think he thinks about this very carefully and thoroughly of what that looks like. And so I think more for him is that he does want to see that violence goes down, crimes goes down, that the city really does take in part what public safety can look like for this city. That's probably where I will stop with that. The last question I think you asked was about, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if somebody else was saying something. I think you asked about what a success look like, if the community has issue with what the process is a part of. I think that's what you asked. So what I will also say within this part is that we are still meeting with community organizations that have come and sat down and asked about being a part of the process which I do believe that many of those organizations will be a part of this process. They've also given out recommendations, particularly of what it is that they would like to see. So I think with the mayor doing this process, it's not just him thinking about what it is that he wants. He's trying to be very inclusive about other organizations being a part of this process and for them to have their say in this. So I think from that standpoint, what I would say is that that is part of the community, those folks that are definitely coming up. And it's been people from both sides of the community, from different areas of the community that really wants to be a part of this as far as organizations that are being represented. And so hopefully, I think when that's announced, people will get to see who that is and what this looks like.
Eric, appreciate you coming. I've got just a couple comments and then maybe a question. Based on our letter and even some conversations that the commission has had with the mayor's office, even leading up to the letter going out, we were hopeful that for the sake of transparency and even accountability, that we would have been used a little bit more in this process. A couple of things I would be concerned about is I think some other potential groups and individuals may be, if you all are the one that is getting, compiling, and reporting on what the surveys are saying, I just see that as problematic. And I think that the commission could really help, even down to, say, just hosting some of these meetings or something. There's not very much confidence right now, even in the process, particularly since the mayor says that the chief is going to be a part of the process. And since he's been challenged on it, he still hasn't came back to say clearly that he will not be involved in the process. And I think I'm expressing what a couple of the other commissioners are, is we don't want to get into this process halfway through, 3/4, and then the people do not have confidence in what we've gotten to. So I wish you would convey and even consider how to utilize the commission more in making this an open, transparent process.
Did you also have a question, Tucker, as well?
Not so much as a question over against, I just don't know why the mayor just won't say that the chief will not be in this process. I mean, because if he is going to be in the process, it seems like it must be the mayor is the only person that feels that he brings something to the process. So I guess, no, I don't have a question.
Gotcha.
So this is Commissioner Vennick. Mr. Brown, thank you very much for being here. I guess I had 3 questions. The first question is, what is the timeline for identifying who will be on the review committee? The second question is, what is the timeline for determining who will be on the interview committee? And the third question is whether or not there was any thought given to perhaps not necessarily selecting a police chief, but a community safety chief or a public safety chief, and try to get away from what is proven to be and shown to be a somewhat volatile term, which is police. Much of the discussion nationwide and in Nashville has moving away from concepts of policing to either public safety or community safety. So I guess the question is whether there was any consideration given to talking about something other than a police chief.
Thank you, Mr. Vennick, for that. For the first 2 questions, I could probably answer them in one answer together. They would probably be both announced together, and hopefully that will be announced very soon. I cannot give a specific date, but hopefully that will be announced pretty soon. To your last question about public safety and public safety office, community safety chief and public safety chief, I think that's something that would probably still be on the table. That could probably easily be something, again, that's not connected to this, but also the use of force policy committee of those recommendations going, because a lot of that process will still be added into the police and chief process. So I understand your point with a naming of things and what does that invoke within people. And I'm very sure that that's still open to be on the table.
Are there other questions? I don't see any hands raised, but
Mel, can I just say one thing to sort of round it out? It's Erin.
sure.
It seems to me that the questions of all of my fellow commissioners are sort of in some ways going back to exactly where I was. And I guess what we're saying here is that it's the difference between like all of these things are in consideration and are being thought about and talked about and whatever, and then the reality of the practical action of it. It seems to be, and Eric, this is by no means directed at you personally or even positionally, but I think what's being expressed here is a whole lot of lip service and not really like actionable ways that this stuff practically goes into place. And so I think that I guess we will be looking forward to the way in which these things become clear and actionable and become more than just I don't know, the concept of we're going to take all of these things into consideration and these things aren't off the table. And we're hoping for this to be a part of the review committee and the expectations of the police chief or safety chief or whatever. I think that there is an underlying frustration for us. Sorry, Avi, I'm done in 1 second. I think there's an underlying frustration for us about the way in which these things actually translate into change and difference, et cetera. And so again, I echo my gratitude and pride in what Mel put forth as recommendations for us. I just hope that somehow we will be able to see and understand the way in which those things are actually taken into account and maturate into practical and effective, I don't know, policy or questions or whatever. Thanks.
Yeah, so let me follow up on what Aaron was saying. Eric, also for some historical context. And I did.
Avi had a question. If not, I think he had his hand raised. If I can answer that question for him.
He did, but and I adore Avi. But at this moment, he is a public guest.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right. Yes. So we will get to you, Avi, or you could text me your question. But I do want to follow up to what Aaron was saying, and it speaks a lot to what other commissioners are saying. And I did have a good opportunity to talk to Mr. Bunton about this. With regard to the data that you all are collecting through the surveys, I just really want to encourage you to make all of the underlying data available transparently to the community, and to do that pretty timely. We had assisted a previous administration in the REAL dialogue, the race, equity, and leadership dialogue. And I'm just going to be very frank here. This particular body had a real struggle with getting the underlying data and to encouraging the mayor's office at that time, the underlying data transparent and available to community. It took a year, almost a year to the day. And there was a lot of frustration around how that happened, because this body had been led to believe that that underlying data was going to be given directly to us for analysis, and that we, the trust that the community had in our representation of what people said during that dialogue, that trust was significantly broken because of that. So that context, like many of the folks on this commission, and certainly on their staff, come to this request to participate in this community engagement with that history in mind, right? So our suggestion was let us help you in analyzing that data and putting that data out to the community so that people trust that what they're seeing is what was actually collected. And that's not to say that, I do hear me saying that there's any reason to believe that that's not true in this case. But those concerns stem from real events in the very recent past.
Understandable, Mel. And what I can do is we actually have this on open source already, open file. And what I can do literally when I hang up out of this meeting is I can send you that information. So that is open for anybody to see. It's loaded up daily with everybody's information. So I'll make sure you get that right after this, right after I get off this video conference.
That's great. We appreciate that. Avi, a privilege for having been one of the longest serving commissioners. I think if you have a question, please join.
Thanks, Mel. I came on because I knew Eric was going to be presenting and I wanted to hear what he had to say. Eric, just a couple thoughts. One is, will the leadership team looking at the hiring of a police chief figure out a way to hear the voices of the kids on the streets? They've shared with us many, many important ideas from their lens, and I'm afraid we're not dignifying them. And I think some way to approach that would be important. My second question is a follow-up to Irwin's, and that is, to what degree are we looking at the hiring of a chief in relationship to all the needs our communities have? Poverty and health and even our social recreation opportunities for continues to operate in a silo and is not part of a collective effort. I think I'm off. So
No, I can hear you.
I'm sorry, I'm off.
No, we can still hear you.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Mm-hmm. Well, Eric, if you could go ahead and speak to some of that, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, that definitely is on the table as far as talking about youth and definitely their experiences of what they're hearing within the community, and then I also within our collaboration with you all, that would be something that would be great, definitely with community engagement that we'd be a part of. But no, we are making sure to also hear youth experiences and voices with some of the things that are happening as well. Trying to make sure I heard the last question. I think you said something about police relations within that piece as well. I think I would still give the same answer that I gave Mr. Vinnick on that one. Of these are things that are part of the process that I hope they're there, and then we also understand what naming means for people and communities as far as to relation with police.
Thank you, Eric. Other comments, questions, commissioners?
I guess for me, Eric, just one question, and maybe you can't really give me the answer. What is the rationale behind having the FOP as part of the process?
That rationale actually came from, if I'm not mistaken, Councilmember Russ Bradford. The council had asked that all communities be represented within this process from that standpoint. So I think whenever there's an announcement of people of this, I guess we would hear what that looks like as well.
Well, then I guess my question then would be, could you involve then the Nashville Black Peace Officers Association?
That has also been presented to us as well.
Okay.
And Eric, I think that also speaks to one of the recommendations made by this commission was to make an extra effort to get the survey responses from the rank and file of the police, but also I think that the FOP not necessarily be the best representative for the for middle management at in the police department, right? So when you talk about the experience of lieutenants and sergeants, so I just want to reiterate, that we felt that it was really important to get beyond FOP, but to officers and other employees who might not feel represented by the FOP.
Understand. Hopefully, we can all work with each other in this to definitely talk about those pieces within this commission's recommendations and how we can properly go about that.
Just to offer like a capitalization on that, it's this idea that those that are the most marginalized, disenfranchised, disadvantaged, etc., are the ones who also are the voiceless. And so I think that Commissioner Tucker and Avi and even our director Mel have really tried to, as I'm trying to do now, even if it's a reiteration or a repetition, capitalize on the importance of those being the folks that are represented in this process, more so even than those of us who are trying to be a voice for those voices, right? And so that's it. Thanks.
Okay, if there are no other questions, comments, guidance for Mr. Brown, I think we can move on, but I want to say thank you so much, Eric, for coming today. And I want the commissioners to know that you, I, and Mr. Bunton will continue this conversation on how we can, best support community engagement and to ensure that those who might not otherwise have an opportunity to participate are in fact heard in the process.
Absolutely. I look forward to working with you as well. Thank you all. I appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And Jeremy, are you still there?
I am, Mel. It looks like the next thing on our agenda is the director's report. So I think I'm going to toss it back to you, but I do want to tell you before you start, I actually have an FDIC audit call for the real job that starts exactly at 5:30. So
okay. Well, my suspicion is that we are going to be able to wrap up in time for you to get that call. Great. So in that vein, Avi, will you mute yourself? I will be quick. So we are in the office. We are still working from home. Given the increase in the numbers and the rate of transmission, and the move back to a modified phase 2, I have made the decision that, to the extent possible, my staff is going to continue to work from home as long as we are able to meet the core needs of the commission. I am getting cabin fever. So hopefully things will improve. So we will be able to go back in the office. If nothing else, I think I myself will be going back to the office very, very soon, even if I'm in the office alone. One thing that we have been very busy with the significant increase in interest and commitments, at least, spoken commitments to racial equity after the killing of George Floyd, and then the subsequent protests and calls for change. We've definitely had in our office an increase in requests for community engagements, for trainings and workshops. And that's pretty much taken up the bulk of my staff's time, including my time. I'm excited to say that I was invited and said yes to the area Chamber of Commerce to do a conversation with them about systemic racism and equity. And I think to me, that's a really great opportunity. It's, speaking to folks who prior to this recent, push, or the most recent recognition that systemic racism does exist. Prior to that, I would frankly have been a little surprised to have received that invitation. So I think that's a good sign. We've done big engagement, the Legal Foundation with actually all of their offices, done several engagements with the Community Foundation in Middle Tennessee, and with several others. So that's been the bulk of what my office has been working on. We've also taken the opportunity with having an intern for the summer to update all of our Title VI information on our website to make it just more accessible for people, both constituents and for the agencies that here in Metro have an obligation to comply with Title VI. So we're working on that with our intern. Also doing another run at the Metro-wide Language Access Plan, which given what was reported by Metro agencies this year in our Title VI report, is something that is really kind of critical right now. There is a surprising number of Metro departments that do not have an adopted written language access plan, despite our having trained Title VI officers or Title VI coordinators in those departments over the past 5 years that needed to be done. So, and frankly, that puts a strain and puts the city at risk in a couple of ways. The federal and state funding that come into Metro departments mean that there is an obligation to comply with Title VI, and that includes having a written language access plan. And of course, when we look at the disproportionate impact that this particular health crisis has put on immigrant and refugee communities, right, and the disproportionate impact that they're feeling. Having clear language access plans and having a metro-wide commitment to using the language access contracts and vendors is really critical. Being able to communicate with our residents who do not speak English as a first language or who have limited English proficiency at this point, frankly, means life or death. So, that's something that I am working on. We're working with Fabian Bedney at the mayor's office, and we're looking at possibly asking the mayor to consider an executive order for a metro-wide language access plan, or to go to Metro Council for legislation. And so that has been another, that's been one issue that your director has spent a lot of time working on in the last few weeks.
Mel, I just wanted to say thank you very much for not letting that drop. I know that there's a lot of other things going on, but this is vital to our city, to everyone there. So I just want to say thank you for following up on that.
You're welcome. I appreciate that. I've come to realize 5 years in this position that sometimes it's just, you have to be a dog with a bone. Like, I just gotta keep gnawing at it and not let go. So that's one issue that I know has been important for a number of years. And yeah, I'm not letting that one go. So thank you. Hold on, let me look at my report again. And I really want to give a huge shout out to Barbara Gunlardy, who our Director of Community Engagement, who is not on this call because she is getting ready to host her second training at the Police Academy in so many weeks. So she worked very hard to modify to modify the mobile diversity seminar that we do with the Academy, to modify that for public health safety. And so she did that last week with the whole cadet class, and the police academy and the police department requested us to do a similar training for some lateral hires that they had recently made. So Barbara's going to be doing that tomorrow. She has to, of course, show up there at like 5:30 a.m. So she's getting her last minute things together for that. And so I'm sorry she's not here to hear my thanks, but I just wanted to let you know that, despite the fact that we're working from home, we really have tried to stay true to the major commitments that this commission has put forward for us. So the last thing on my director's report, our next meeting is September 7th. And again, that in person, unless the governor's executive order is extended again, allowing for virtual public meetings. The current executive order expires at the end of this month. So we'll have to wait to see what that looks like.
Mel, I have a question about that. If there are those of us who either are not in town per other things with work and or just don't feel comfortable doing in person, are we going to be offered the opportunity to virtually come in, or does it have to be that the whole meeting is virtual for that to count for quorum and all that stuff?
Yeah, so under, and I know Derek is on this call, but, so if he wants to step in and correct me, feel free. That's our legal counsel. But no, the open meetings law is a state law and does, without that executive order, it does not allow for virtual participation in public meetings. I think
That's what I assumed. Thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mel,
Yes.
can I ask an unrelated question that maybe doesn't have an answer?
Okay.
After that discussion with Eric Brown, I just felt like all of our energy kind of go,
Yeah.
And not that we expected anything to be any different, but I don't know. We're all feeling it. Like it just feels like more of the same, if not maybe worse. And I don't know if any other commissioners have any other thoughts of what we can do. It's just I've talked to community members too before this call, and I think it's even worse than I understood it to be. And so I'm just wondering what everybody else is sort of thinking to do at this point. And maybe, I don't know if this is even necessary. And I know Jeremy has to go in 9 minutes, but I just feel all of our energy kind of like what.
Well, I am interested in hearing more too, Miriam, because from my perspective, like, I'm your director. I work for you. So, the request for assistance or partnership in community engagement, I want to ensure that, that work fits in with your vision and maintains the trust that this body has built over the last few years with community. So yeah, I need your guidance and your honest thoughts on what kind of participation that fits in with your priorities.
Well, it just feels like if a representative from the mayor's office doesn't have like 60% of the crucial information to share, then how can anyone have that information? And I don't know. And then, yeah. So, I mean, maybe we just got to go down this road and scream and shout at the different moments. But it really feels like that, we didn't get any answers really.
If I can jump into this, it would seem to me, and I don't know what the protocol on that is, but I guess my sense is that if we don't see any movement or response to our letter that was sent some time ago, I would not feel restrained to request that our executive director submit that letter to the Tennessean for publication, with an adjunct that there's been no response to the letter.
Well, I think they think they're addressing the letter because they've included community members and they're bringing in people and they're doing the survey. So in their mind, I'm less concerned about that. I'm more concerned of like the whole process sort of looking and cosmetically looking right, but not being, you know what I mean? Like they're checking the boxes. Yeah, we got community involved. I even know people are being asked, yeah, we're doing a survey, but it doesn't feel like there's any eye towards an innovative change towards, doing this better this time.
Amen, Miriam. Amen. That's exactly what my point was. Amen.
I mean, and I think honestly, they're trying somewhat, somebody, maybe Eric, but the sentiment I get is that we're just trying to police and take care of violence and take care of youth violence. And it's like, what? That's not.
Well, then there would be nothing that would hold us back from doing an evaluation of that process and basically offer an observation that it's not getting to what really is needed at this point in time.
Well, and this is Mel again. Let me say that one thing that really struck me and that I tried very hard to build into your recommendations was Okay, so there's this really foundational book called Managing Public Disputes. And our former chair, Phyllis Hildreth, was very kind to share that solution worlds. And one thing that I took away from it that is always forefront in my mind now is that, you know, managers of public disputes often make the mistake of, you know, hey, we're going to come up with the process and, you know, we sort of know what we want the answer to be, and we're going to spend the rest of our time selling it, right, to the stakeholders, where it's perhaps more beneficial to go back even a step further, not just have community answer surveys, but in that survey, ask the more foundational question, what process do you want to see used to fill this important position for the city? Right? So you're not just asking the community to say what they want in a public safety chief or a police chief, but asking the question, what process do you think would be fair, appropriate, transparent, and build trust? And so unfortunately, that's not what's included in that survey. And another thing is, you know, our recommendation, you know, social science in every sector basically supports the importance of having interim leadership when you're making this kind of big executive leadership decision. And unfortunately, I don't think that that's, you know, based on what I see in the roadmap from the mayor's office, their plan is to have somebody in place by the end of the calendar year. And it's just hard to see how you do the robust community engagement that builds trust and to do the sort of transparency around it in that time frame. Okay.
Well, I do agree with you, and I was really trying to hold my comments, but those things do concern me, and I've heard, like others have voiced from various people and groups in the community. Number one, the frustration with not having interim leadership, which leads and adds to the prospect that this whole getting a new chief is tainted in and of itself and alone. So I don't know. I am deeply concerned. That's all.
Hey, Jeremy, you can go ahead and get off. Tucker can get us adjourned when we need to. Okay, well, I appreciate your guys' comments. And, you know, this is going to move fast. So perhaps we could, you know, if need be, perhaps the executive committee could look at hosting an executive board meeting, you know, to address specific requests from the mayor's office. And Commissioner Yosbeck, you have your hand raised.
I do.
Go ahead.
To your point, Mel, this process seems like it's going fast. Is there anything that just prevents us from inviting the community stakeholders to come to a meeting that we call to tell us what they want the process to be, and we pass it along and try and push the powers that be to use that process?
No, I don't think there's anything preventing preventing us from doing that.
Well, I'm not smart enough to figure out if that's worth doing. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, I mean, if you want to make a specific motion, maybe then there could be some conversation about it.
I'd like to make a motion that we discuss whether we should have an event where community stakeholders come and dictate what the mayor's process for selecting a new police chief should be.
Second.
Discussion?
I don't really have anything to add to the discussion. I just struck me as an idea to just, rather than wait for people to do stuff, just do it ourselves and put pressure on them to do what we want.
Well, Mel, pursuant to the charter that sets up the commission, it says that we can do things like that. So how would we need to do that? And if folk are in agreement to it, how long would it take to do it? Because again, 30 days and we're already into this when they're talking about actually, according to the published statement, mid-October, they are planning on selecting the new one.
Could we call for public participation at our next meeting on September 7th?
If that meeting were held by Zoom, that would be difficult, or WebEx or whatever we're on.
Well, certainly it can be done, right? IT has set up public participation for Metro Council. So there are a couple ways to do it, right? Like we're doing a recording of our meeting, but we could also talk to them about, doing a simulcast through the Metro, whatever it's called, the network, Metro National Network. And I could ask them, how they managed the community and public comment for Metro Council.
We could also, I know this is beyond us, but we could partner, like a bunch of groups did some surveys in like 3 days before a council meeting and had data for that council meeting through Instagram. If we partnered with a local organization, that might be something to explore too. And you get the data, digitally. You don't have to do a webcast or simulcast through Metro, and people have to pay for it. And you might get more information that way.
So another option too is if you want to identify a small committee from the commission to hash out the logistics with me. That too would have to be a publicly noticed meeting, but maybe less onerous if it's, 3 commissioners. So there's okay, I know Jeremy had to leave, so Davey, you are technically chairing this meeting at the moment.
Okay. So what do I need to do?
Yeah, I know. So there was a motion on the table, but it wasn't perfectly clear. Commissioner Yesbeck, I think that.
You want me to make a different motion or the same motion again?
Yeah, because the motion to talk about it, we're going to talk about I think you might have meant, a motion to,
I want a motion where we're gonna have a meeting to invite community stakeholders to say the process that they want for the new police chief selection, hopefully on an expedited basis. That's it.
I would, if I can offer a friendly amendment, the amendment would be that 3 commissioners join with Mel to help facilitate that process.
okay, so
I don't want to muddy up the motion anymore, but it's as though the COB has not been brought to the table in this. Is that even something that we'd like to discuss co-sponsoring with them or not, or just moving forward with us?
Rick, I see you have your hand raised. Legal counsel probably going to try to clean up our procedural.
Simply, I wanted to ask that the motion could be amended, but the concern I had, I just want everyone to remember that where more than one of your commission members are involved, it requires a public meeting. So when you invite others to participate, it means you've got to give public notice to those different committee type meetings as well. So I just want to mention that to you in case you want to keep that in your thought processes as you determine how to move forward.
Yes, very much. All right, so there was a motion on the table and a motion to amend. I don't know if we need to second that first motion before seconding the amendment, but
Well, the process would be if Commissioner Yesback accepts the friendly amendment, you just have one motion. If he doesn't accept it, then it would have to be amended. They would have to be seconded. The original motion would have to be seconded.
I accept the friendly amendment.
Great. Derek, do you have your hand up again?
I think I was trying to figure out how to unraise it. I've clicked on several.
Oh.
Well, I think I finally figured that out.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so is there a second to the amended motion?
Second.
Is that Aaron?
Yeah, that was me, Aaron.
Okay, great. Any other further conversation? Okay, you can call for the vote.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Proposals. Seeing that there are none, the motion carries.
Okay, and if there are 2 or 3 commissioners that want to participate in this conversation, I'm happy to do the work necessary to set up the, the public notice, as Derek reminded us.
I'd love to be involved.
I'd be happy to be involved if you need. This is Commissioner Rodriguez.
Okay, so Commissioner Tucker, Commissioner Rodriguez, is there anyone else who wants to be involved?
I'm in, no.
Okay, Commissioner Abou-Fazli.
And I can be an alternate. That's Aaron.
Okay, great. Thank you guys very much. I'm not necessarily sure that you have to vote on that, but I appreciate the volunteers. Okay, it looks like we're already over time. So me look at the agenda. All right, if there are any announcements before we adjourn? Great. Arthur, if you want to get a motion to adjourn and get us done, I'd appreciate it.
All right. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded by Yesback.
Consider ourselves adjourned.
Thank you.
So Mel, just let me know when you want to have this discussion or what it is you want us to do.
Okay, I'll send an email tomorrow to you.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Goodbye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Be safe.
Very good.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye all, thanks.